Hey everybody, and welcome to today's informational webinar presented by Quimbee Bar Review. During today's session, we'll be explaining the bar exam, covering everything you need to know on how to pass the bar, whether you're taking the UBE or sitting in California or Florida. We'll get started here in just a moment to allow time for everybody to join us. Today's webinar will begin with a presentation from Lori Eller, who is a bar review director here at Quimbee. And at the end, we'll dedicate time to answering your questions live. You can submit the questions that you have as you have them anytime in the Q&A feature below, and either one of our Quimbee team members who are working in the background here will answer you directly, or we'll address it during the live Q&A. We might not be able to get to everyone, so if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to provide you with our contact information at the end, so don't worry about that. All right, well, I'm going to send things over to Lori, who's going to get our presentation going today. Take it away, Lori.
All right, thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar today. Let's go ahead and get started. So first, just a quick agenda of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to have a quick introduction about Quimbee, and then we're going to chat about the bar exam. We're going to cover the UBE, California, and then Florida, which are two of the bigger state exams. We're going to talk through state-specific components, which are separate from the bar exam. And then we're going to talk about the NCBE and the three exams that they administer, the MBE, the MEE, and the MPT. So we'll go into detail on each of those parts. Then we'll cover how to register for this exam. And then, as Emily mentioned, we will have time at the end for a live Q&A. So first, what is Quimbee? So we have 4 different products. You start out with our study aids products. So these will help you prepare for class and exams in law school. Next, we do have a MPRE review, so we'll help you take that MPRE exam with that free review. We have a bar review course, so you can prepare for the bar exam with our bar review products. And then finally, after you are a licensed attorney, we do have a CLE, which is continuing legal education subscription. So that way you can get the credits that you need to keep your license active in your state. So essentially, we are an all-in-one platform for that lifelong legal learning. So we support you from your very first day of law school all the way up until your final day as a practicing attorney. Now let's chat about the UBE. So we'll take a look at what this exam covers. We're also going to put up a poll to see how many of you are taking each of these bar exams. And don't worry, we'll give you some time to answer as we walk through these next couple of slides. So again, first we're going to be talking about the UBE, which is the Uniform Bar Exam. If you don't know what that is, I've included a map here and it shows all of the states that have adopted the UBE. So what that means is you're taking the same exact exam as all of these states in orange on the same days across the country. So it doesn't test any state-specific content. It's general legal principles and then some federal law. Now, taking the bar exam does mean learning a lot of acronyms. So you'll see some of them up here because the UBE is comprised of 3 different parts. The MBE, which is the multi-state bar exam, the multi-state essay exam, or the MEE, and then the multi-state performance test, the MPT. You can see the weightings here with the MBE being 50% of your total score. The essays are 30%, and then the performance tests are 20%. Oh, and I see we have the results from our poll there. It looks like a lot of you are taking that UBE, which is great. So this exam is, like I said, made up of those 3 components. So let's talk a little bit more about each one of those. So the MBE section is composed of 200 multiple choice questions covering 7 different subjects. And for those subjects, think back to your very first year of law school. It's things like torts, contracts, and I'm sure everyone's favorite, civil procedure. And then you have that MEE, which contains 6 essays that you'll need to complete in 30 minutes each. The MEE can test the MBE subjects, And it can also test 5 additional subjects, which are more like 2L, 3L subjects like family law, business associations, wills, trusts, and estates, stuff like that. Now, the MPT is a bit different. It's a closed universe writing task. So what that means is you get a case file and you do not have to learn any specific law for the MPT. Everything you're going to need is in that case file that you get. You'll read that case file and then you'll use it to draft a basic litigation document of some sort, like a client letter or a memo to a partner, something like that. And you have 2 of those. Oh, there we go. Now I see we've ended the poll, so it looks like a lot of you are taking that UBE. We do have a couple Florida students, and then we have a good amount of California students as well. And then some of you are still a little unsure. So definitely you have time to figure that out, especially if you're, a 3L going into this year. You can decide what state you want to go take. So a little bit more about that UBE. So again, it is a uniformly administered bar exam, and it results in a portable score. So that means applicants who take the UBE can transfer their scores to seek admission in other UBE jurisdictions, and also makes it a little bit easier to move around. States provide expiration dates for those scores, typically 3 to 5 years. So an applicant's score is no longer portable past its expiration date. So you will want to check that out for the states you're considering. UBE scoring is based on a 400-point scale, and each jurisdiction sets their own minimum passing score. Minimum passing scores can range anywhere from 260 to 280, although most of them are between 260 to 272. The NCBE maintains an updated list of those minimum passing UBE scores for each state. So their website's an easy one to check out to see what those minimum passing scores are in states that you're considering practicing in. The UBE is administered over 2 days, so it's a 2-day exam, in the last Tuesday and Wednesday of February and of July each year, so twice a year. The MEE and the MPT are administered on Tuesday, and then the MBE is administered on Wednesday. And what your days will look like when you go to take this exam, there's 6-hour days with 2 3-hour sessions, and then you get a 1-hour lunch break in between. And that's the same for both of those days. Everything is in those 3-hour chunks. Now, switching gears from that UBE and moving on to a state-specific exam, we have the California bar exam. So as you can see for this exam, the MBE is included, and it accounts for 50% of your score, just like the UBE. But in addition, you will complete essays which can test on California specific law and 1 performance test. Those California essays are 36% of your score, and then the performance test is 14% of your score. Now let's talk a little bit more in depth about that California exam. The California exam, again, includes that MBE, but the other components are a little bit different. So that essay component contains 5 essays. You'll have 60 minutes per question. And these California essays cover the MBE topics and additional subjects with California state law, like community property and professional responsibility, and some others. There's also a performance test, but unlike the MPT, there's just 1 of those writing assignments. In terms of format, it's pretty comparable to the MPT. Now, another state exam is the Florida bar exam. So as you can see for this exam, MBE still there, still 50% of your score, but then you have 3 Florida essays, which are 25% of your score, and then you have 100 Florida multiple choice questions, which are 25% of your score. Both of those portions will be testing Florida specific law. So again, for Florida, MBE, still part of your exam. But in this one, you'll have that additional multiple choice component. And these 100 questions test various aspects of that Florida law. For those 3 essays, you get 60 minutes per question. And they cover, again, not only those MBE subjects, but also other topics like family law, professional responsibility. And then as you can see, the Florida exam does not contain a performance test at all. So that is not part of your exam if you're taking the Florida bar exam. The bar exam often also includes state-specific jurisdictional components that test knowledge of local laws and procedures. They do vary by state, and usually they're after the bar exam, so they're not usually attached to that 2-day exam. It's a separate thing you would do afterwards. Just as an example here, New York candidates require candidates to complete the New York law course and pass the New York law exam in addition to that UBE. These components ensure that candidates are well-versed in the specific legal framework of your state and the practice standards where you're intending to practice law. 33 of those jurisdictions that administer the UBE have these state-specific requirements. Again, they are much smaller in scope than the bar exam, and typically states often provide comprehensive study materials for you on their website, and some of them are even open book. They're typically completed online after you take that state's bar exam. So another quick example, I am licensed in Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts, we have the Massachusetts law component. It's a 50-question multiple choice exam on state-specific laws, and they recommend you do it after the exam. I had 4 days, I think, to complete it online, and you can retake it as many times as you need. They do give you outline materials on the website. I think I studied for a week or two. So the law is smaller in scope than the bar exam, and it's something you kind of do after the fact. So you'll want to check your bar examiner's website to see if the state that you want to practice in has one of these jurisdictional components, and then you'll need to see what all that entails, when you can take it, that kind of thing. Now, who is or what is here the NCBE? So the NCBE, you'll hear that term a lot in relation to bar prep because they are the ones that administer the bar exam. So they are a nonprofit organization that develops these tests and then provides them for states to administer on the exam days. So they create several of these key exams. They create the MBE, the MEE, and they create the MPT. And then in addition, they also create the MPRE, which is an ethics exam required for bar admission in most jurisdictions. The NCBE also conducts character and fitness investigations, and they provide other related services to the legal profession. And then fun fact here, just up on this slide, you'll see NCBE, that term used a lot in relation to bar prep because they do give out previous questions from prior bar exams to bar review companies to use in their prep courses. So just a fun fact about Quimbee is we use all of the questions available from the NCBE in our course. That way you get familiar with what the questions will look like on your exam. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each one of these 3 components, the MBE, MEE, and MPT, that the NCBE develops for those state bar exams. So let's take a closer look at what you'll face on the MBE. So it takes 1 full day of your bar exam, and it's administered in 2 3-hour testing sessions. So you have a morning session of 100 questions, you get an hour lunch, come back for an afternoon session of 100 questions, so 200 total. It is a hard copy exam, so you'll get a test booklet, and then you'll mark your responses on a Scantron sheet. It covers 7 areas of law. Again, these are probably things you covered in your 1L classes. So we have civil procedure, con law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, property, and torts. Questions are drawn equally from these subjects. So you have 25 questions from each of the 7 subject areas, plus you have 25 experimental questions that are not actually scored. These big 7 are double tested on the UBE. So that means they're going to be on those multiple choice questions for the MBE, and they could be tested as an essay. Even if your state doesn't use the UBE, nearly all states administer the MBE as part of their bar exams, and as we saw with those examples of Florida and California. So a lot of people do see the MBE as a difficult exam because of the large amount of subjects covered and the depth of coverage. So NBE problems don't test broad strokes, they test nuances. So you have to know the law pretty deeply. Plus, of course, it is time pressured, and staying on pace means completing one question in under 2 minutes. But there's no need to fear the NBE. With the right strategies, you can definitely conquer that portion of your exam. So one way you can conquer that, and this can kind of help when you're in these classes in law school or kind of going through your law school courses, you should master the highly tested topics within each of these big seven. Because again, as we discussed, the MBE draws questions equally from each of these seven. So the exam will contain the same number of torts questions as evidence questions, but within each subject, certain topics will be more frequently tested. So it pays to master those highly tested topics. So we've listed out the highly tested areas on this chart here. So for example, in your Civ Pro course, pay special attention to jurisdiction and venue. Both of those are highly tested. In con law, focus on individual rights. This is actually the most frequently tested topic on the MBE is con law individual rights. And then another example for property, focus on ownership of property. So that topic includes present estates, future interests, co-tenancy, and then landlord-tenant law. And then in torts, of course, you have to master negligence. If you have negligence down, you'll be able to pick up some extra points because it comes up often on the MBE. It also helps on the MBE to know what you'll be facing. So we're actually going to take a sneak peek at a sample MBE question. So we're going to be looking at a crim law question. And if you're new to studying criminal law, or maybe you've studied it semesters ago, let's refresh the law tested. So to be guilty of murder under the common law, a defendant must act with at least malice aforethought. This includes an intent to kill or cause serious bodily injury, or a depraved heart, which is an intentional act with extreme indifference to human life that caused death. So, okay, here is the question. We're going to put up a poll here so you can input what you think the right answer is to this sample MBE style question. And I'm going to pause for a second here to give you all a chance to read this question. Okay, I see about half of you have submitted, so I'm gonna give it a couple more seconds here. But just as a note about the format of the MBE questions, they're all in this like fact pattern style where you have a fact pattern and then you're answering a question about the fact pattern. None of them are as straightforward, at least for the UBE, that is. Some of the Florida ones are a little bit more straightforward. But for the UBE and the MBE, none of them are just as straightforward as what are the four elements of negligence? And they're always going to be some type of fact pattern that you're answering a question about. And so just give it a couple more seconds here and then we can end that poll and talk about the right answer. I'm gonna go ahead and close out this poll. Looks like a lot of you actually got this answer correct. Good job. So here, answer option B was correct. So that was no, because the defendant did not act with malice aforethought. So here, because the defendant lacked that intent to kill or cause serious bodily injury. And also, he didn't act with extreme indifference to human life. He is not guilty of murder. So A was wrong because their affection for the victim does not preclude a murder conviction. C and D were wrong because defendant did not act with a depraved heart or with premeditation to kill his uncle in this situation. And notice again how those MBE style questions are testing your ability to apply legal rules and reasoning to the given facts. So you have to be able to recall those legal rules, but that's not all. You have to also conduct legal analysis to select the right answer for these questions. Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit and chat more about bar exam essays. So bar exam essays will probably remind you of law school because they contain fictional fact patterns similar to those that you get on your law school exams. And you'll analyze each issue tested using IRAC or a similar writing structure. But bar exam essays do feature some special difficulties. They're more time pressured than most law school exams where you get several hours. On the MEE, you only have 30 minutes to read the fact pattern and write your response. For California and Florida, you get 1 hour to do so. They also cover a large swath of law. So the essays on the MEE are drawn from those big 7 MBE subjects, plus 5 additional subjects. These are business associations, family law, wills, trusts, and estates, conflict of laws, and then secured transactions. Some subjects are more highly tested on the MEE because it contains 6 essay questions, and the examiners pick from those 12 subjects tested. So not every subject that you're studying will be tested on your bar exam. Traditionally, 3 subjects have appeared the most often. These are business associations, wills, trusts, and estates, and CivPro. Notice also some subjects aren't tested as frequently. So if you're trying to decide which of these bar exam essay subjects to take classes on in law school, for many students, as an example, skipping conflict of laws makes sense. It isn't as heavily tested as the other subjects, and it's only tested on the essay portion, and it only appears alongside another subject. The examiners will not devote a full essay to conflicts alone. It's always going to be paired with another subject. So it can definitely help to take some of these classes in law school. That way you get a bit of a primer to them before you start bar exam prep, but you will fully learn these in your bar review course as well that you'll take. Lastly, on the topic of essays, know there are lots of free resources out there to help you as you prepare for the essay portion. We have a whole resources tab on our site where we chat through more detail about the essays, how to do IRAC, how to memorize, and different resources like that that are all free you can get access to on our site. Okay, now we've covered preparing for the multiple choice portion and the essay components of the exam, but many students will also face a performance test as part of their exam. So again, if you're taking the UBE, you'll take the multi-state performance test. And some state-specific exams also contain performance tests like California, which we looked at. So more about this performance test. It's a practical, like lawyering exam. So it's composed of 2 90-minute questions. You'll get an exam booklet assigning a specific task and providing related fictional evidence and legal authorities like statutes, case law. And you'll draft a practice-oriented document. The exam booklet contains the relevant law, so you won't be expected to learn these specific subjects beforehand. And there are a bunch of different types of documents they can have you draft on the MPT. We actually have another poll up here we're going to launch that asks what is the most frequently tested document type on the multi-state performance test. And some of those options you can see from the answer choices are a letter, an objective memo, a bench memo, or a persuasive argument/brief. You might have written some of these types of assignments in your 1L writing classes, and especially those objective and persuasive memos. So I'm gonna leave it open here for just a couple seconds for you guys to guess as to which one you think is the most frequently tested type of document on the MPT. These are all pretty common. There are a couple wildcard assignments the examiners do throw out, but when they do throw out a wildcard, they usually give you more instructions, more detail as to the format, because they know it's a little bit unique what they're asking you to draft. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end that poll in just a second. Okay, great. So it looks like a lot of you got the right answer here. So the most common is the objective memorandum. And the second most common, which you all guessed as well, is the persuasive argument or brief. So for the objective memorandum, you're going to be drafting a document predicting the outcome of a legal issue. And then the persuasive argument or brief, you can be persuading the court to do a particular thing. For example, excluding evidence of a criminal defendant's prior convictions. Then the third most common is a letter. So for example, you could be writing a demand letter which demands that the recipient of your letter takes or refrains from some type of action. And it'll always be like a simulated situation there. So you'll have someone specific that you're writing it to. So these are just a couple different types of assignments for that MPT. With Quimbee Bar Review as an example, we walk you through the three kind of most common types of MPTs, and we give you lots of those to practice with as well. So you'll get to see a lot of different ones, so you can be familiar with how they look on the exam and have that experience of going through and writing some of those out. Now, that kind of wraps up our explanation of what those three portions of the exam are. We also are going to cover here how to register for the exam. And the registration process can vary slightly depending on what jurisdiction you're planning to take the exam in. So a good place to start is by checking out our website or your state's bar exam website to see what the registration dates are, what all the fees are, that kind of thing, and just getting all of that basic information. So you'll want to start by checking out the official website of your state's bar examiners to ensure that you meet all of those educational prerequisites. You might need to create an account on their website, and you'll also definitely want to know all registration deadlines. That way you make sure you have all of your information in with them by the deadline for the exam date you want to register for. You'll also complete the application form and provide all required personal, educational, background information. You'll also need to submit supporting documentation for your character and fitness evaluation. So this includes things like transcripts, certificates, and many states require a character and fitness evaluation before you can register for the exam. And I will note this process can take longer than you think to complete, so please ensure that you have enough time to find and upload all of that required documentation. As an example, when I registered for the Massachusetts exam, I had to track down all of my addresses from the last 5 years, including how long I lived at each one of those addresses. And that took me a while to track down all those exact dates. Took longer than I thought it would to figure that out with the dates included. So just make sure you leave enough time to go through all of that material and upload all of the things that you need for your character and fitness evaluation. Then you'll pay the required fees and register for your preferred exam dates. And you'll also need to make sure that you have taken or registered for the MPRE if your state requires it, as some of them require that before you can register for the bar exam as well. And again, for specific details for your state, always refer to the official website of the bar examiners or the bar association of the state where you intend to take the exam. The NCBE also has jurisdiction pages that give you links to your bar examiner's website and give you some basic information there about registration, but you always want to check your state's website for the most updated, accurate information and only rely on that. And in terms of exam prep and those months of hard work leading up until the big day, at Quimbee, we do offer a bar review course to prepare you for your bar exam. We support all UBE jurisdictions, plus California and Florida. And then some features of our Bar Review Plus course include using proven learning science to develop our materials. Learning theory is at the core of our mission, which is why we design all of our materials to incorporate findings from over 100 years of educational psychology research. And then one way we incorporate learning science is through our illustrated lesson videos in our signature Quimbee style. These 5 to 7 minute bar-specific video lessons provide strategy tips and example-driven lessons to help you pass on your very first try. We also take a practice-based approach to bar prep with plenty of practice questions from past bar exams, incorporated through full-length diagnostics and a simulated MBE to allow you to practice your exam performance. And then, of course, through practice essays and a performance test that you'll get feedback on from our licensed attorney graders to improve your writing over time as you're going through the course. If you do want to check out Quimbee Bar Review, you can schedule a demo of the course by scanning this QR code, and then you can pick a time for myself or one of my colleagues to log on to a course and walk you through our program. That way you can see it for yourself, ask any questions you have. If you are ready to enroll, you can enroll directly on our website at quimbee.com/bar review. We're actually having our biggest sale for current 3Ls. It ends at the very end of the month, so it's a really good time to look into bar prep. If you have questions but don't have time for a call, no worries. You can also shoot us an email at barprep@quimbee.com. We've been super proud to help so many students through this bar exam and start their careers as attorneys. And this is just a small snapshot of some of the feedback that students have given who've used our course to pass the exam. We do have a lot more reviews on our website as well, if you want to check that out. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Emily for the Q&A portion.
Great. Thank you, Lori. As you said, we're going to answer your questions here now. If you have one and you haven't already, please put it in the Q&A feature. We'll either respond to you directly, try to respond live, and as Lori has said, if we're not able to get to your question, you can always contact us. We'll put that information back up here at the end. We did receive quite a few questions from you all when you registered, so let's go ahead and start with those. The first question we got is, do you attempt to guess the types of essays that will pop up based on previous years?
Good question. I know a lot of people do try to predict those, but we don't give out predictions because it's really difficult to predict, and we don't want students relying on a prediction we've made when studying. You're going to want to be fully prepared for any of the subjects that are thrown at you for those essays. But one thing we do have is our UBE course has an MEE frequency chart. So that graph I had showed pulls from that frequency chart, where it shows all of the essays that were tested for each year's exam for the last decade or so. And just as a couple of highlights, we talked a little bit about during the presentation, business associations was tested every exam except 1 year in the last decade. Wills Trust and Estates was tested the last 8 exam cycles or so. But again, you don't want to rely on predictions because that does not mean that they're going to choose those subjects again for this upcoming July. They could, mix it up. They like to keep us on our toes. So we don't offer any predictions, but we do let you know what's been tested most often. And then we also offer all of the past essays for the California and the Florida exams. So there you can see what subjects were tested more frequently on those exams too.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Next question here. I'm guessing this is somebody who might be a 1L or a 2L. They're asking about how the bar exam might be changing in the future.
That is a good question. So, yes, the next gen bar exam is coming up soon. So, if you are just entering law school, it's definitely something you're going to want to research to see if your state has adopted next gen or not. So, it's essentially a new version of the UBE, and states are right now actively announcing whether they're going to be adopting that or not, or kind of going back and creating their distinct state only exams. So it's definitely something we're keeping a big eye on. And if you are incoming into law school, you'll want to see whether your state has planned to adopt that or not, because it is a little bit different than the UBE. Some things that you can do to prep though. The big seven topics are staying. So if you want to take any like advanced Civ Pro classes or any advanced subjects in those typical 1L classes, those subjects are staying for next gen. And business associations is also staying. So that could be a good class to take to prepare in 2L or beyond. Um, there's also a couple other changes where they're incorporating more like performance test-ish things. So taking some advanced legal writing classes would probably be really helpful as well.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, next question. I think you went over this a little bit, but maybe just to reiterate, how is the test facilitated and proctored? Is it written on a computer? Does it vary state to state?
Yeah, very, very good question. It with the UBE, you do get a hard copy of the MBE and you're going to fill out a Scantron for that. But then with the essays and the PTs, usually you'll get a hard copy of those. And with the UBE, you certainly do. And then you type them on your computer. You can handwrite them, but I would not recommend that because it's a lot faster to type them. You can also, move things around, bold, add white space. It's just a lot easier time-wise to type them on your computer. So you'll want to register for the laptop program with your state, and it will have those details when you go to register. But would definitely recommend typing them, though you can handwrite them if you want to.
Great, thank you. And I know we had, I think the majority of people are planning that attended today are taking the July 2025 bar exam, but we have someone who's taking the February 2025 bar exam, and they're asking how much time they should give themselves to study, also asking the recommended number of hours per day per week that studying takes.
Gotcha. So we traditionally, there's like a 10-week full-time program. So at Quimbee, we offer that. We also have a part-time program. So it kind of depends on which one of those schedule options would fit your circumstances. So traditional like 10-week programs, they'll either start in mid-May for the July exam or it'll be mid-December for February. And those are full-time. So ours, as an example, 6 days a week, average of 8 to 10 hours a day. That does include, taking breaks, and it does include reviewing your notes, working on memorization. That's not just going through like the tasks that we have. It's kind of a holistic amount. So pretty full time in that regard. And then, as I mentioned, we do have a part-time schedule too. So if you're like working while studying, that's a really good option for you. So it is 6 months. So for February, our part-time course starts on August 28th. And it's a lot less studying per day. So it's like 2 to 4 hours a day as compared to that like 8 to 10 number.
Awesome, thank you. All right, a couple similar questions, so I'll kind of put them together. We have somebody who is a 1L, so early on in their law school career, asking about how they can start studying for the bar as early as possible, it seems. And then also someone who is a 3L asking how they can prepare for the bar exam during their 3L year. Could you maybe give some advice on either end there?
Yeah, sure. So with 1Ls, your 1L year, like all of those subjects are tested on the bar exam. So just really making sure you're taking good notes, making good outlines, saving those outlines, and then even kind of reviewing that material just like every so often. Your 2L, 3L year can be helpful. So that way you're not losing all of that knowledge that you learned in your first year of law school, because it is tested on the bar exam, can be really helpful. But just really going through those classes and paying attention and really engaging with the material is just all you really need to do there. And then when you get to 3L, assuming you've already kind of picked your classes and can't take any more bar subjects, I would say just really working on your legal writing can be helpful at that stage. Some schools offer a bar review like course, like a bar prep course that is like a class. Those are fantastic if your school has them to take. And then just generally, there's a lot of resources online to get familiar with the exam itself. Like we have several of those on our site, like I mentioned on that slide, including articles with like study memorization techniques. And then if you sign up with your bar review program, not all states or not all companies allow you to have like early access, but if you sign up with our program, we do give you strategy guides that are available as soon as you purchase the bar review program. So those are great to read before you start studying, just to really know what to expect on the exam in a lot of detail. So all of those kind of things can be helpful in 3L, kind of working on the writing, really learning the exam and knowing what to expect.
Great, thank you, Lori. Let's see. Okay, let's go for this one. Someone's asking, can you sit for both the MBE and the non-MBE bar exam in July 2025 is when they're looking to take it?
Uh, Basically, no. So there's a couple like exceptions, but almost every like non-MBE or non-UBE state still has the bar exam on the same days in July. So example like California and Florida, you still take them on the same days as the UBE. It's the last Tuesday, Wednesday of July. So if you wanted to take two state bar exams, you'd have to do July and then you'd have to take the other one in February because they're probably going to be on the exact same days, unfortunately. So yeah, you'd have to kind of do that over a longer period and do July and February. You couldn't take them both in July.
Great. And then I think probably just a quick question here is someone's asking for a clarification. For the full-time and part-time Quimbee courses, is there any price difference between the two or any other differences someone should be aware of?
Oh, yeah, very good questions. I think some companies do have some price differences, so that's a good question to ask when you're looking into like what course you want to go with. But with us, same price for both. So our Bar Review Plus course has both options, and our Bar Review course has both options, full-time and part-time, and there's no price difference there. It's just whatever works better for your schedule, whether you want to do the 6 months or the 10 weeks more condensed time frame.
Great, perfect. And that answers the other clarifying question of repeating how long each of those courses are. So great. Let's see. I think we have time for maybe one more. Let's go with this one. So if passing the bar with a certain score, if they're passing the bar with a certain score, can they be qualified to practice in another state? Um, if that state requires a lower one, is what I'm guessing they're asking.
Oh yeah. So yeah, with the UBE, yes, absolutely. That's one of the big like benefits of the UBE is that if you have a passing score in one state and that's passing that score would also be passing in another state, as long as you meet that state's other eligibility requirements, you register, do the character and fitness, you can transfer that UBE score. So you don't have to retake the bar exam every time you want to move states or get licensed into like adjacent states. There are time limits though to your scores that does vary by jurisdiction. So again, the NCBE website has a whole list of those. So that's a good resource to check out what those time limits are because some states only will accept UBE scores within the past like 3 to 5 years or at some other type of time frame. So you'll want to look that up and make sure you transfer your score within that time frame because then otherwise you might have to take the exam again and no one wants that.
Definitely not. All right. Well, thank you, Lori. With that, we're going to wrap up the webinar here. Thank you to everybody that joined us today, including you, Lori. I really appreciate you. If you have any further questions we did not get to, we'll put our contact information back up on the screen here. You can click around quimbee.com. You can book a personalized consultation there or email us with that email on the screen, barprep@quimbee.com. We'll get back to you within 2 business days. Especially if you have any more personal questions that you didn't want to ask live here, you can ask any of our bar directors anytime. And they can also let you know the promotional pricing that's available at that time and maybe specifically to you. We will be posting the recording of this webinar on that resources section of quimbee.com that Lori pointed out earlier. We'll also be sure to email it to you by the end of the week if you would like to watch it back or share it with a friend. But with that, we hope you guys have a great rest of your day.